Ryan, we got a lot to react to here. Sweeping the Houston Astros. Were you, so first of all, just a reaction to this one. I don't think I'm cruel in saying I was pleasantly surprised by a sweep. Not by a series win. I thought, God, Seattle's been healthier. They've been so hot lately. But I was pleasantly surprised by a sweep in Houston. What about you?
Yeah, I didn't think they would sweep. I thought they'd win the series. I just think they're a better team right now in terms of health, in terms of talent. They're better than the Astros. But given the nature of that stadium and some of the struggles they've had there and some of the weird things that happened there and almost happened there, I thought they might drop one. But I did think they would win the series. They were playing well enough. We saw how well they were playing prior to that trip in Kansas City, and I thought they would win at least 2 or 3.
The series to me, Ryan, was like everyone's saying it was a statement, right? You made a statement against the Astros, but I'm thinking like long term. You know, what could be the long term effects of a series sweep in Houston?
Well, I mean, I think, confidence wise, it's pretty important. I don't think you're going to have to go back there and play them again. I'd be stunned if Houston can kind of navigate their way back, get a wild card, win a wild card series, and end up playing the Mariners again. I don't think that would happen. But I do think, like, moving forward, it does set a tone. Like, the Mariners have been bullied by the Astros quite a bit. A lot of teams have. And the core guys on this team, J.P. Crawford, Cal Raleigh, Logan Gilbert, George Kirby, some of the guys have been around for a few years. They experienced that, they watched the Astros celebrate winning a division title last year. They beat the Mariners and celebrated in Houston. I mean, I think I've seen that Houston win the division title or clinch a division title like 3 times in Houston. So, I think just that kind of mindset of, okay, yeah, these guys aren't that good. We've beaten them. And I mean, honestly, like Logan Gilbert kind of summed it up and Cal Raleigh summed it up a few days before that. I was like, hey, all along they knew they'd have to go through the Astros and they wanted to beat the Astros and show them, hey, we've earned this. We've earned this division title. If they win it, that's the way they wanted to do it. They wanted to beat the Astros. They didn't want to back into it. And going in and taking all 3 from Houston and doing it pretty decisively. I mean, you look at the runs that were given up. I think the starting pitchers only gave up 1 run over 3 games, and the rest of the stuff came off the middle relievers and non-leverage guys. So it's like, yeah, this was a pretty notable win. And Houston was beat up. But I think Houston's beat up, and they're losing more pieces, going into next year as well. So I do think this is a pretty important win.
I thought that Friday would be really scary once Woo left. I think all of us were assuming the same thing. So comparatively good news that it's a pec strain or a pec soreness. Didn't see him. Obviously, I was looking at your guys' tweets. Didn't sound like he was like iced up or anything that day or the next day. That being said, what do you anticipate potentially happening with his next scheduled start?
Yeah, he would go Thursday. He's scheduled to go Thursday, I believe, against the Rockies. But the Mariners could clinch the division by Wednesday. I mean, they can clinch a postseason spot by Tuesday. And we were wondering whether they would celebrate that or they would just wait. Because the goal all along has been to win the division. It's something that just hasn't happened for this franchise in 20-some years. So I don't know how they'll do that, but I think, if they clinch the division by Wednesday night or even Thursday, I don't know that they start Bryan Woo in that start. Maybe they do a bullpen day or Johnny Allstaff or whatever you want to call it, where they start Emerson Hancock and use bullpen pieces, or even if they make a minor roster move somebody like Casey Legumina out, bring in Casey Lawrence. They've got some other relievers down there, so they can manipulate the roster in the coming days if they really needed to. But, nobody really knows what's going to happen until Woo gets out there and plays catch and then throws kind of, like a bullpen session or a side session at 80% effort to see where that pectoral muscle is. If they feel like it's not progressing, then they may string it out. But like I said, if they can clinch the AL and that second seed, the AL West and the second seed, then, you don't need to pitch Bryan Woo. I mean, I think the biggest risk you run is, you get him healthy and he just he doesn't feel comfortable on the mound or feels a little rusty because he hasn't had the mound time that he's used to. But I do think they kind of dodged a bullet. But until we see him out throwing, and we didn't see him play catch yesterday, then you don't really know when he's going to come back.
Hey, where would you rank that dive and play by Robles when it comes to Mariners history and big plays?
I mean, from the context of when it occurred, and I've seen some great catches. You've seen great catches in playoff games and stuff, but kind of given the context of when it occurred, where it occurred, like the inning, that it wins the game. It's a double play. It wins the game. Because like to me, if that ball gets down, they score a run. Munoz is on the ropes. They probably tie the game, and then you're fighting it out with a beat up bullpen as it is. So. I can't remember a better catch with that much significance in terms of like the overall season goals and the drama of the ninth inning and where it was being played at. Because to be honest, like that game right there, in years past, they lose it. They lose that game just because things go wrong. It snowballs. They can't stop it. They don't have the talent to make the plays to make it stop. This time they have the talent to make it, somebody made a play, stopped the momentum, got the win. And I think that's the difference. I mean, looking at this team, it's 9 real players on the field. When you put the starting lineup up, it's like their A lineup that they used on Friday night. Those are all, major league players with experience. This isn't like in past years where they're running 2 utility guys in a platoon at a spot, plus another guy that's trying to prove himself. These are all real guys with playoff experience and some success, and that's what the difference is. That's why we're seeing them put up 7 runs at a time, because they don't need to they're not having 2 guys carry them and then a bunch of guys striking out at the bottom of the order.
Do those feel like by far not losing in big moments and having tested veterans the 2 most pronounced differences? Because you've covered this team for so many years and you've seen different iterations. I would imagine, though, that through all of those iterations of Mariners teams, there's like the same kind of frustrations, the same patterns, the same issues that can sometimes linger regardless of GM, regardless of whoever. Is it those 2 things that are the most pronounced? Is there something else this year that feels different to you?
No, I just think the talent. I mean, a lot of times everybody talks about, chemistry or this or that. More often than not in sports, talent wins, whether it's football, basketball, baseball. If you have significantly more talent than your opponent, you will win. You will beat your opponent more consistently. I mean, that's just the way it is. You can have all the scrap, the grit, the best strategy in the world. But if somebody's just that much better than you, if you play enough, then, that comes out. And like over the course of a 162 game season, talent matters. And like I was on the previous road trip, when they're in Tampa and they got swept in Tampa and they go and lose to Chris Sale. And like I wanted to tell every Mariner fan last night, go look at your tweets on September 1st through 4th and what they were like and now what you're tweeting now. But to me, it was like, okay, they weren't playing well, they weren't executing, but like I also knew that the amount of talent they had and their commitment to doing it right and like preparing to play every day, that the execution would eventually come because you don't have that much talent. It's like Suarez was in a slump, he comes out of it. Now like Randy Arozarena is in a slump, but everybody else, they have enough talent to withstand that. The 22 team that made the playoffs, if that year with Cal or JP or one of those guys that was carrying the team, or Julio, when Julio was in a slump and he wasn't going, the team wasn't going because they only had about 2 guys that did all the damage and you relied on 2 or 3 guys every single night. This group right now, you don't have to do that. This is the most talented team I've ever covered. I mean, the 18 team with Robbie Cano and Nelson Cruz, Kyle Seager, D. Gordon, Gene Segura, I mean, those are all established dudes. But this team is better. They have better pitching. They have better bullpen. They have more depth, and they're more athletic. So now it's just all about going out there and playing. And I do think that they, when they had that kind of meeting in Tampa, which didn't really result in wins, but it did change their mindset. But when they were in Atlanta, they just kind of did the, as Cal said, screw it moment. They used different words, I think, and just said, go out, like, stop worrying about it. Stop worrying about what's looming, or the potential collapse. You get caught up in that. You get caught up in the idea of where you're at in the standings, whether you're winning or losing, or how many games in a row you've lost. It will crush you mentally. Just focus on the day and try and do that. And I do think that Dan Wilson's mentality about trying to win every game helps play into that a little bit, because it forces them. You're so focused on trying to win that night, and he's going to do everything he can to win that night, that you can't, you don't get caught up in what you've done the past 2 weeks or what's looming ahead.
How does the talent stack up against Yankees, Blue Jays, Tigers? Is there enough you feel to consider this team World Series contender, or you're just taking it day by day?
No, I think that they have every opportunity to win the American League. I think every American League team is flawed in a lot of ways. You can go look at the Yankees. They're starting Jose Caballero at shortstop because Anthony Volpe has been so terrible. They're getting no production out of third base. Giancarlo Stanton is just one weird step away from being hurt, and their pitching's been a little suspect. The Blue Jays, I was stunned how well they played this year, because they were awful last year, but they have issues with their bullpen. They're closing out games. They've had them the last few years. The Mariners, I think the Mariners' big thing is their leverage guys, how much they've had to use them. And, Munoz still walked the tightrope of being like Fernando Rodney, of always allowing a guy on base or two. And that will come back, and bite you in the end. We saw how flawed Houston is. The Guardians are one of the least talented teams I've ever seen, but they just are finding a way to play. I've always felt Detroit was a little smoke and mirrors because they rely so heavily on platoons and they don't have enough starting pitching. So, yeah, you're looking at all the field and you say, okay, and, the Red Sox as well, looking at all the field and you say, okay, they have a chance. I don't love the matchup with the Yankees because the Mariners just haven't played well at Yankee Stadium. The few times that this group has been there, the pitchers seem to get a little passive when they're there instead of being as aggressive. But I think given where they're at now with the team and the lineup they have now, I don't think they're really afraid of anybody. And I think they stack up as well as anybody in the American League. National League, I think the Phillies are the best team in baseball, with the Dodgers a close second. But, you don't have to worry about that till you get to the World Series.
I was going to say.
These guys have never been to a World Series, so maybe we should try and do that first before worrying about who's going to play.
That's what Bump was saying earlier. He was like, okay, well, first you got to clinch a playoff spot and then the division. And Curtis and I are sitting here like, well, you wouldn't have to see the Yankees until ALCS. So,
yeah. It's so, I've never, and that's what they talked about. And they talked about it a while ago, but like Logan Gilbert said last night, it was like, one, they wanted to play the Astros, beat them, take it. And then also, I don't believe in the phrase control your own destiny. It's the whole Chip Kelly thing, because destiny can't be controlled. It's by nature of the definition. But they control their path to where they want to get to.
Yeah.
They just have to win. We're sitting here talking about they have 3, their magic number is 3 to clinch the division with 6 games left, including 3 against the Rockies. It's 4 to clinch a first-round bye and be the number 2 seed. If you'd have told people that, mid-June when Julio wasn't hitting and Bryce
After
was on the
Yankee
IL
series.
Logan's on the IL and everything's going wrong, or even, on that road trip to start September.
Yeah.
And here they are. And so they're in a better position than they've ever been to really harness this. We're sitting there, Adam Jude and I last night, and Daniel Kramer having an adult beverage after the game, just saying, okay, how is this going to shake out? The crazy part is you don't know any of the seating. It's going to be chaos. I saw a friend of mine from Boston say that he has hotel reservations in Seattle, Cleveland, Houston, New York, because you don't know. And for us, we don't really either. I expect them to win the American League West, and I expect them to get the 2 seed. I think they can do that. I think Detroit's reeling enough, and I think Houston obviously is pretty flawed that they can get this all kind of clinched by Friday night, so that the weekend series against the Dodgers is just play, get loose, and slot out your rotation and do that, which would be unbelievable, because the last few years have been just anxiety ridden every day going into the final day. So they've never been in a better position since I've covered the team to kind of get to the World Series. Because I didn't cover the 2001 team.
Yeah.
I've covered a lot of losing teams, but this is the best opportunity for them to kind of get everything that every fan's ever wanted.
Well, hopefully that coverage continues through October. Make sure you're reading it, seattletimes.com or the Seattle Sports app. He is Ryan Divish. Thanks, Ryan.
Thanks, Ryan.
Yeah. See you guys.